Steel glinted between the trees at the edge of the green, clearing a polished blade, catching dawn light through ancient leaves, and Lara Chen, kneeling beside the collared man, exhaled slowly and said, "They didn't lose you, they followed you." Earlier she had helped the man to the fire pit. The cultivator beast had watched from the tree line but had not intervened. The man's name was Elias. He was 40. He had cooked because he had to. He had learned fast because pain had taught him faster. When Lara had handed him a bowl of root soup, his eyes had darted around the clearing the way a beaten dog checks for the boot before eating. Elias had whispered, "This is good." Lara had answered, "You don't sound convinced." He had stared into the bowl and said, "It's efficient, that's what matters." Lara's jaw had tightened. She had said, voice steel, "Food can be more than that." Elias had finally met her eyes. The first real eye contact since he had collapsed at the clearing's edge. He had said, very quietly, "That's what I thought too, before the collar." Astra had growled then, low heat building along the dragon's spine. The mossy ancient forest had gone quiet around them, and then the steel had glinted between the trees. Now, with the cleaver in her hand and the cultivator beast watching silently from between two ancient pines, Lara stood up slowly. Her ribs still ached from the basilisk's tail. Her hair was still singed from the wyvern bolt. She turned to Astra and said, voice low, "This time we don't run." Astra spread its wings. The forest held its breath. 20 hunters formed a perfect line at the edge of the green clearing at dawn, banners raised, polished armor catching first light, 20 disciplined bodies in matching black. And behind them, chained at the necks, 20 more figures with empty eyes, all of them collared, all of them silent. Lara Chen counted the collars. She did not move. The hunter leader, the same silk and gravel voice from the Salt Lake camp, stepped forward with hands open. He said,
"Lara, you ran. We understand fear."
Lara, voice cold, replied,
"You tracked a slave to my camp. That is not fear. That is entitlement."
The leader smiled slow. He said,
"You misunderstand. We brought guests."
More collared bodies emerged from the forest line, each one chained to the next. Empty eyes, hollow cheeks, living warning labels with human faces. Lara looked at Elias trembling beside her fire. She looked at Astra, wings tense behind her. She looked at the cultivator beast watching silently between two ancient pines. She looked at the cleaver in her own hand. She set the cleaver down on the chopping log. The hunter leader's smile flickered. He said,
"What?"
Lara said,
"Sit. I'll cook. One meal. You eat, then you leave."
Suspicion rippled through the line. Then hunger won. They sat. They ringed her fire pit, 20 hunters and 20 collared slaves, the largest dinner table she had ever set in her life. She turned back to her 3 pots. She picked up the wooden spoon. She breathed in. She whispered to herself. The old corporate mantra she had whispered to herself at 5 a.m. in a Manhattan studio for 3 long years.
Logistics, Lara.
Then she began to cook. 20 iron collars cracked open in unison around 20 necks and dropped into the moss with a sound like wind chimes. And the hunters seated around the fire pit looked up from their broth bowls with mouths still half full, their faces blank with something none of them had felt in years, memory. Lara Chen had cooked with intention. The first pot had been warm, grounding, root vegetables and slow heat. Within minutes, the hunters' shoulders had dropped. One whispered to another, almost embarrassed.
"That's comfort."
The second pot had been heavy, earth and iron and slow simmer. Limbs grew slow, aggression dulled. Weapons sagged in their grips like the men holding them had forgotten what hands were for. The third pot had been subtle. Herbs, clear broth. She ladled it carefully, bowl by bowl, no 2 bowls quite the same. Truth slipped out of them, one hunter said, almost to nobody.
"I haven't slept since spring."
Another murmured.
My brother died in the camp.
A third, voice cracking.
I don't even remember why I took the contract.
The hunter leader stiffened in his armor. He growled.
What did you put in this?
Lara, still stirring the third pot without looking at him, answered.
Nothing you didn't already carry.
The cultivated beast rose silently behind the camp, immense, patient, a walking mountain casting its shadow across the entire clearing. Astra spread its wings. The collars on the hunters' necks cracked, one by one, and fell open. Metal hit moss in a slow, chiming rain. Chaos erupted. But no one attacked Lara. They were too busy remembering who they were before the collars. A small creature with leaves sprouting along its spine hopped down from the cultivator beast's mossy shoulder, scurried across the dewy clearing on 4 soft paws, and dropped a bundle of fresh wild herbs at Lara Chen's feet, like a child handing her a starter kit for a journey she had not yet agreed to take. Lara crouched, laughed, said, Is it giving me a starter kit? Astra, beside her, rumbled. It is entrusting you. The hunters had retreated without banners by this point. Some did not leave at all. They sat by the fire pit, quiet. Some cried into their hands. Some just stared at the open collars at their feet, like the iron rings were small dead animals. The hunter leader had stood at the edge of the clearing for a long time, watching Lara with an expression she could not read. He had finally said, voice quiet, You think this is over? Lara had answered, No, but you do. He had turned. He had walked into the trees. He had not looked back. Now Elias' collar gone, raw red bruise where it had sat, stood beside her at the fire, hands shaking as he chopped wild onions. He said, I don't know how to cook without orders. Lara replied, You'll learn. We all did. The plant creature sneezed pollen and scurried behind her leg. The young grey dragon pressed itself against her other leg. The cultivator bowed once and faded back into the forest, soil shedding off its shoulders in long, slow streams. Astra lowered its head and rumbled. Then I move with you. Lara touched her grandmother's silver chain. For the first time since she had fallen, her hands were not shaking. A glowing system prompt bloomed in the air above Lara Chen's campfire on the 30th night, golden text floating in front of her face only, reading, Chapter 1, complete. New chapter unlocked. The Queen of Scorched Borders. Lara stared at the text. Then she grinned slow and wide. She said one word into the smoke.
Bring it.
Earlier, they had begun to travel again. Not fleeing, not chasing, cooking as they went. Quick scenes blurred across the days. Lara roasting on a flat, sun-warmed stone, herbs in her hair like a crown. Astra's massive cobalt wing shading her at noon. The young grey dragon stealing a carrot and hiding behind the plant creature, eyes wide, mouth full. Elias awkwardly stirring a pot, earnest, learning to taste again. A village child in a grass-thatched hut, accepting a bowl of soup with eyes too big for her face. Villagers whispered before they arrived. Monsters hesitated instead of charging. Beasts watched from a distance, curious, patient. Lara learned which to accept. Far away, in a throne room neither she nor the dragon had ever seen, a ruler whose face stayed in shadow studied a vast map marked with scorch lines and green zones. The ruler's gold-ringed hands traced one specific path across the parchment. The ruler said quietly, dangerously,
A chef with dragons. That changes borders.
Another figure stepped from the deeper shadow, smiling, voice silk on a blade. That figure said,
Find her.
Back at the campfire, Lara stirred a pot and hummed, unaware. She looked at her party dragon, young dragon, cook, plant creature, and she looked at her own steady hands, hands that had not shaken in 12 days. She whispered to herself, smiling,
Lara Chen, 30-day review. I think I got promoted.